All right, let's get started. Good morning to everybody in person and online. Thank you for joining today's discussion on the future of higher education. I'm Jordan Brewer. I'm the manager of government affairs here at Cato, and I'll be moderating this conversation. I'm joined today by the Honorable Congressman Burgess Owens. He represents the 4th District of the great state of Utah. He's the chair of the Subcommittee on Higher Education and Workforce Development, and also he was formerly a safety in the NFL and a Super Bowl champ. So he's got experience in tackling big problems. He's joined by Eric Smith, a research fellow here at the Cato Institute. Eric is a former professor at York College where he researched and taught rhetoric, so he has a lot of experience in the academia space. He's an expert on racial theory and public discourse. He has a particular ability to reveal how words can be manipulated in an Orwellian way for political and ideological ends. And then he's joined also by Andrew Gillen. He's a research fellow as well at the Cato Institute. He has a PhD in economics from the Florida State University. He's a higher education expert, particularly when it comes to the economics of higher education, as in he's our numbers guy on all things higher ed. So today our topic is saving academia. There's a lot of concerns on American higher education system, particularly with the ideological capture, cost and return on investment, and a widening gap between the students, what they learn, and what the real world demands. Recent polling by Cato's Emily Eakins underscores the concerns of ideological capture. Young Americans, particularly college students, are increasingly embracing socialism. 50% of those under 30 now view socialism favorably, despite the historical and economic evidence against it. And then on the financial problems of academia, college has famously gotten expensive, with student debt now topping $1.6 trillion. In today's discussion, we'll be exploring those problems and how to fix them. Just so a note, we will be having a Q&A session towards the end of this conversation. Online audience may join the conversation and submit questions directly on the event webpage, Facebook, YouTube, and X using hashtag CatoEd. And it's actually great to see that some people have already sent in some questions, so feel free to send them in as soon as you want. For those in the in-person audience, please speak clearly and directly into the microphone so everyone in the auditorium and online can hear the question, and please announce your name and affiliation as well. So let's get started. We'll start with you, Mr. Congressman. Thank you again for coming to this event.
Thank you.
So the name of our event is Saving Academia. What is wrong with our universities and why do they need saving? What are the problems you're seeing from your constituents?
Well, first of all, thank you everybody being here. This is one of the more, most important conversations we can ever have. There was something that our founders believed that Thomas Jefferson, ignorant and free can never be. Our society is based on free thought. It's based on the fact that we can have differences, but yet we have the same end game, therefore we have some remarkable conversations, and we come together as long as our end game is the same. And our end game for our country has always been about freedom, becoming a more perfect union. And to do that, we start to look at each other inside out, not outside in. We start to find those things that we can agree on, even though we might have differences all kind of ways. Things like the flag, things like the national anthem. How about sports? You know, we can all have a remarkable team that we love. We might be different ways of thinking, but we come together on Sundays or Saturdays and say, this is my team, and therefore we can high five and enjoy the process. What America does best is we believe in the concept of we the people. And we the people only can grow if we're educating ourselves. As a real quick background, I won't take too much time. I was very blessed. I grew up in the Deep South, Tallahassee, Florida, days of segregation. My dad was a college professor for 40 years at Florida A&M, and my mom was a high school teacher. And let me tell you about that generation that has not been taught. That generation, and it didn't matter what the race the community was, black, French, Italian, we were not assimilating, but we had a few things in common. We loved our country. We wanted to be Americans. We wanted to assimilate. And for my community, what it meant was that we were going to do anything we could to command respect. We don't beg for respect. You don't ask for it. You command it. And how do you do that? By winning. So when it comes down to things that was very pertinent during that age, that generation of winning, faith, family, the free market education, the black community was winning big time. My first exposure didn't come to white Americans didn't come until I was 16 years old. So everything that I knew, my entire perspective of life, was based on the community I grew up in. Whether it be the teachers, the business owners, the engineers, the plumbers, everybody that I saw was working hard to get to the middle class, And everyone had the same message to young people like myself. You live in America, young man. You can do anything you want to. You work hard, you be honest, you respect the elders, you respect women. You do what you need to do to get a good name. If you do that, you're going to succeed. That's the American way, and that's what we have to educate ourselves to understand. If we don't do that, then we head in a different direction. I just want to make one last point. Faith, family, the free market education. Where did that land us as a community? From the 40s until the 60s, it was a black community that led our country in the growth middle class, men matriculating for college, men committed to marriage, and percentage of entrepreneurs. No other race was running the way we were in terms of success. I saw it. I was part of that middle class. Now we've turned that upside down because we've allowed the Marxist ideology to filter into our system, into education. When all of a sudden you hate faith, family, the free market education, you get what we see across the country today, where none of those are respected anymore. So what we're doing right now is having the most important conversations that we can have in this country, because our promise is that every single generation should be standing on our shoulders. They should be the generation that takes our legacy, our dreams further. Every generation's done that, and now we're coming back to get that done now. So I'm excited about the fact that we're going to disrupt the educational system. Education should be about the success of our kids, not the success of an institution or bureaucrats or people who are risk averse, those who are trying to find security by getting a job they don't have to do anything. This should be about how can we bring this innovation, bring the idea of a remarkable past that we can stand strongly and be excited about. How can we bring that to the forefront so we can move forward? So I'm excited about this conversation. We are in a process of disrupting a system that's been broken for a long time. So get ready. I'll say this. I think we're going to look back and we feel so blessed that we're alive and experiencing what's going to go on in the next 4 years. We're getting back to basics, my friends. For you young people in here, Ball State, I hear that's in the house, Ball State? My goodness. My good friend, Schaefer Suggs, my strong safety center, with the Jets, was from Ball State. So just so you know, he's represented you guys well. I'll just say this. I'm excited about the type of mindset, the idea of wanting to inquire, to want to understand, then articulate that understanding. That's what we have represented here. So we have all different backgrounds, and that's also very, very important to understand that we have different ways of coming to this conclusion. But there's one thing about truth. Truth is what it is. If I let go of a ball right now, the truth is it's going to go down because something called gravity. And I don't care what I say about gravity, if I agree or not, it's going to go down, all right? So I love the fact that we're seeking truth again. And it's going to be up to you guys to take it to the next level because your kids, your grandkids, are going to want to be able to understand and benefit from what you're learning right now. So, all right?
Thank you for that, Congressman. Do you have any follow-up on that, Eric?
Where do I begin?
Yeah.
I loved one thing you said. It's about winning. A lot of what's going on college campuses, not every campus is the same, by the way. Some are egregiously bad and some are just bad. But it's not about winning. It's about the inability to win. It's about telling students the world you're about to go into is against you in a lot of ways. Not every student, but students who are considered traditionally marginalized. There's no way you can win and have a self-actualized life in this society. And sadly, things like critical social justice, a lot of the studies majors that are steeped in very progressive ideologies, a lot of these things didn't just pop up, right? These are not, I should say this, these are not the causes of things, they're the symptoms of something. And that something is an allergy to reality on a lot of college campuses. There's a term called prefigurative politics, and I'll go into this, yeah. And what that means is when activists and academics get together, they act out the world they want to see. Occupy Wall Street, which took place about 12 years ago, was this. Those encampments were the ideal society that those activists wanted to see, so they're acting it out. And it's good in that it gets you used to the ideologies and the methodologies and the spirit of the society you want to see. But after it's over, you acknowledge that there is a real world out there that isn't like that yet, and you leave and return to that reality. That doesn't have to happen on college campuses. People literally live on college campuses. Some faculty live on college campuses or closely adjacent to college campuses. So that prefigurative bubble never pops. And if it never pops, then a lot of people are living in, well, a fabricated world. And they're unbeholden to the real world outside of that bubble. And not being beholden to the real world allows them to do all kinds of different things, whether they make sense or not, whether they're good for students or not, whether they prepare our students for the society they're entering after graduation or not, right? So, and I know you'll talk about this momentarily, the idea of student loans and federal funding and things like that could be the key to curing this allergy to reality, right? And getting back to the basics, as you said.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to actually get Andrew in on this, because it seems like we fundamentally see that there's a lack of reality sometimes in the curriculum, right? It doesn't reflect the needs of the students to develop the skills they need for later in life, because it doesn't match with the real world, because they're trying to make a world through prefigurative politics, right? Andrew, what do you think is the accountability measures that we need to start looking at for colleges to start meeting the actual need of students?
Yeah, there's a host of really promising accountability measures, and just to reiterate kind of a point that Eric was making, there's an old joke about bankruptcy. Like, how do you go bankruptcy? How do you go bankrupt? And the answer is you go bankrupt slowly and then all at once. And I feel like a lot of trends in higher ed are kind of moving in that direction. If you look at things like costs, quality, polarization, like all of these things have been moving in not healthy directions for a long time. And we may be getting to the point where there's a rapid solution, hopefully, or maybe it devolves into something worse. And so what we spend a lot of time thinking about is how can we make sure that whatever happens with higher ed going forward is actually going to strengthen our education system, lead us to more productive colleges, smarter students, better outcomes. And I think a big solution to that is thinking about creative ways to hold colleges accountable. Because for too long we've had a system where colleges are able to win in the sense of getting paid either by the government or by their students, regardless of what happens to the students and regardless of if the government gets a good return on that investment. And so you've got a lot of education that's supposedly happening that leaves the student worse off financially, leaves the government in a hole because it doesn't get repaid the student loans, and then the school gets to keep all that money. And so I'm trying to think of ways that we can create a win-win-win solution where the college only wins if the student and the government does as well. And one of the ways you can do that is with risk sharing. So the idea behind risk sharing is that if the student is unable to repay their student loan, maybe the college has to repay it. So essentially, you turn the college into a co-signer for the student loan. This makes sure that everybody's incentives are aligned. So the government, the student, and the college are all rooting for success, and they all only come out on top if everybody wins. And so that's one of the great ways that we could move in the system. And I know that Representative Owens and his committee have been working very hard on some of these proposals, and would actually love to hear more about that.
Well, let me just say this, you nailed it. And keep in mind, what's made this country the great country we have is the entrepreneurial, innovative mindset. It's someone who's willing to take a risk, fall flat on his face, get back up again, and learn from that lesson, move forward. And it's a better product that comes out of it. And I couldn't have summarized it any better in the fact that we need to have skin in the game for our colleges. there's upside of failure. And we've all gone through it. It doesn't feel good. As a matter of fact, it can be miserable. But in that process, you say, okay, next time, if I get another chance, I'm going to do this way this time. As a matter of fact, I'll surround myself with different people that help me to get there this time. There's a bit that comes from humbleness when you go through that process. And the educational system has not had that. This is the one area, I'm going to make an analogy. Earl Mann was the father of public education. He passed away 20 years before Alexander Bell said, "Hello, Watson." Okay, do you know where Hello, Watson is today? This is Hello, Watson now today. I can go to the top of Mount Rushmore because of Starlink, still catch up with somebody in here. I mean, it's crazy. Well, our educational system is still back in the 1800s. Somebody gets in front of the room, everybody listens to the bell, you switch up, everybody's sent in the same direction because this is what success should look like. This is the area that we have to start bringing innovators to the plate again. All right, and I'll say this, how do we do that? We need to bring the industry itself up. We need to make sure that, figure out a way innovatively, those that are best at what they do, that love this profession, that want to teach and they know how to do it, they should be paid bigger and better than anyone else who can do the same thing. So we need to bring that type of innovation, and that's what we're trying to figure out now. How do we incentivize the best minds in our country to come to what they would love to do anyway? Teach kids, to see that light comes on like my mom and dad did. We do that, not only the best will come to it, but those who don't want to do it, they'll find something else to do. They no longer need it or want it, because we have the very best, make sure our kids are the smartest and best prepared in the entire world. We should be exporting our kids' mindset and brain power instead of trying to import brain power. We have it. We just have to figure out how to make sure we're training and getting it done well. So.
And can I piggyback on that? I love something else you just said about the benefits of failure, right? There's a saying, you fall down 7 times, you get up 8, right? But lately, with a lot of the illiberal and divisive ideologies that are permeating academia, if you fall down, you're encouraged to stay there and wait for somebody to pick you up as you complain about everybody else's upright privilege or something. You know what I mean? It's not the optimism and the positive self-regard isn't there, because it's all doom and gloom. It's all this society is awful, we have to change it. For reasons that the professors and administrators may feel passionately about, but not necessarily the students. You know, the students are there to learn a particular discipline, learn some general things like communication, written, oral, critical thinking, things like that, and learn how to be happy and successful in today's society. Now, if you have academics, if you have professors who are brazenly expressing how they do not like today's society, how capitalism is a bad thing, and how this place needs to change, there's an inherent paradox there. You know, this professor is teaching these students to go out into a world that he hates, right? And that's going to take its toll on pedagogy and effectiveness. And just in case you think I'm speculating, I've had professors tell me this, or say this out loud anyway. They're on video saying it, right? So this is not me speculating or being paranoid. This is actually happening. I'm done.
Can I just add to that? Because we had a conversation, my team and I, on the way over, because Eric and I, we've had a chance, we had him in one of our hearings that I was a part of in Congress. He's speaking from experience. And what I love about our country is that we can come to this truth in different ways. And what Eric has done, he's come through the process of this academia. And part of that, and all of a sudden he says, wait a minute, this isn't right. This is not where our country should be. This is not what we should be teaching our kids to be thinking about how to move forward. And what I appreciate is that we can have conversations. At the end of the day, we come together, and what's best for our country, what's best for our kids. It doesn't matter what party we're part of, how we were raised. If it's what's best for those around us, then we should come to the same truth. And that's why I have so much respect for all people. I've changed also over time, as truth has been able to kind of be unfolded from me. So that's a big piece of it. Just want to say that. Okay.
Yeah, I think, there's been a lot of good points about, like, the lack of accountability, the lack of dynamism, right? There's been a lack of innovation in higher education and also K through 12, which you've suggested as well. It seems that there's maybe like two different ways to kind of look at going about these problems. Like one is that there maybe should be a top-down approach, right? People have suggested weaponizing the Department of Ed. Don't get rid of it, weaponize it. Federal mandates. We should make sure that they be teaching patriotic education, right? These types of solutions, right? You might be surprised at Cato Institute. Maybe it might be more interesting to kind of look at bottom-top solutions, right? Reducing the size and scope of government and letting free society figure out those solutions. What are your kind of thoughts on that generally, and maybe what legislative action have you all been thinking about to get about solving that?
First of all, I think we should start off by understanding for those who are trying to envision what would our country look like without the Department of Education. Understand this was not around until 1978. It was a deal done by President Carter to give the teachers union more power. We've been going down ever since. What did the Department of Education do today? Well, they write checks and they put in rules. And for those two things, they only pay back, say, 10% of what a state really needs to run their state. So a couple things we can do. Number one, how does every other industry work? It works from innovators. It works from those who are incentivized to give the best product out. If they do that, they make more money than those who don't want to do that. So we need to bring the free market into the process. We need to take a look at the Department of Education. I would love to get rid of it, to be honest with you. But we have to go through the law process. We have to codify that process. What can we do in between? Well, how about if we start looking at things like student loans being handled by Treasury? How about if we look at civil rights being held by Department of Justice? And then how about block granting and sending the money down to the states so the states can do what they do best? Those states now will be accountable. The boards will be accountable to the parents because they can be fired now based on what they do or don't do. I think where we can fit in is we can do a best of practice database where we're showing what works in different states. And then it's transparent. Parents can get to it. School board members get to it. Teachers can get to it. And all of a sudden you find out what's working in Utah, what's working in Texas. And we can either apply that or not. But if they don't apply it and the grades are still going down in a particular district, somebody will be held accountable because now we have a metrics to look at. So it's about competition, about transparency, and it's about rewarding those who do it the right way. So the fact that we're about in the process of disrupting this system is a great place to be, guys. We're having conversations now that we have not had for literally, I think, forever. This is the first time we've talked about accountability, about making sure that, by the way, one little point about the student loans. I remember when I was in the private sector, I have 6 kids. And I remember going through the process and making sure my kids were in place and move forward. It was changed with the Obama era. And it was changed so that the government began to take it over, and guess who was supposed to benefit from it? Obamacare. It wasn't about the parents. It wasn't about the students. It was about a system, about a government program that needed to be funded. And we're going to use our tax dollars to fund it. That right there should be a non-starter when you think about that. It should be about the kids. Everything we do should be about the kids, period. So just know we're in the process of figuring out how to deal with the Department of Education. The fact that Linda McMahon is a business owner, man, this is so cool, guys. We have business owners throughout our government structure now applying the business concepts to a government who's never, ever been business accountable. So it's a good place to be, and I'm very excited about the process for sure.
Well, I was going to say, you got something.
Just to reiterate one thing Representative Owens emphasized, getting rid of the Department of Education doesn't mean getting rid of everything, and it doesn't mean getting rid of education. Yeah. So you can parcel off a lot of these things, and a lot of these things existed before the Department of Education. Work study was started during the Great Depression. The GI Bill started during World War II. Student loans, we had a small one in 1958, but then it really got off in the 1960s. Pell Grants, we didn't call them Pell Grants back then, but that's what they were. Early 70s. All of this was before the Department of Education existed. So if we wanted to, we could get rid of the department and keep all of these things. And so to me, the getting rid of the Department of Education, good idea, bad idea. But then each of those component pieces also, should we keep it, should we get rid of it? There seems to be a tendency to lump all that together. Like if you get rid of the Department of Education, you get rid of all that stuff. That's not the case.
Very good. That's a good point.
All right, so we talked a little bit about.
Can I just say one thing?
Of course.
The biggest thing about change is education. Understand, change is always a little scary because we don't know what's on the other side. We don't know what that next step looks like. The more we're educated, the more we can understand what has worked in the past, what is working out now. It gives a better confidence about the future. So that's why what we're saying is so important to recognize that parts of this process has been working for so many decades anyway. It's just now a matter of how to bring the best and leave the worst. So we're going to be educating folks to how that works out for sure.
For sure. All right. So let's move on to accreditation. This is kind of another big part of higher education. So in a recent Wall Street Journal piece by Jason Riley, he highlighted how accreditation policies are can entrench DEI in universities. What are your thoughts on that, and what do you think Congress should do about accreditation?
You know, it's interesting because I didn't know a lot. I have to understand this, by the way, guys. I'm one of those guys who said I would never, ever, ever be a politician. I think it was the last ever that kind of caught me, all right? But because of what I was doing with at-risk kids, I thought this might be a way of making a change with that. So accreditation was something I was not really familiar with until I visited a school down in Florida. And sitting down there, they were telling me how they had to, in the curriculum, make sure certain things were put in place or they would not be accredited. And DEI was one of those things. So we came across with something called the ACE, Accreditation College Excellence. And it's a bill that we put through. Thank you, Cody. Okay, it's a bill we put through last term. We passed it in the House. We now have to make sure we get it to the Senate and the President sign off on it. But what it says is that you don't allow these ideologies to come into our educational system. We accredit and we teach those things that will help a young person to move forward and be successful in their careers, in their skill set, in their competencies. And all this crazy ideology, this woke ideology, does nothing but go against that. So we're going to be putting this back through again, and I think we now have the right mindset in terms of not only the Congress, the House, we the people. Of all the things I can say, guys, I've never seen the excitement of the American people that I see right now. We're getting off the sidelines. I think we've been so confident that we can give it to somebody else. They will take care of it. They took care of it whenever we were going through school, so it's going to be okay. Now we're realizing, no, we have to be off the sideline, off the bench, on the field, and whatever we have to do to be engaged, we can get it done. So that's why education right now is at the forefront, because parents are finally saying enough is enough. I'm not just concerned about those kids elsewhere. I'm concerned about my kids now. That brings a little empathy, which is a good thing for us. So,
follow up on accreditation?
Yeah, I just want to kind of echo something you said earlier. Getting rid of something like DEI doesn't mean we're getting rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the original meanings of those words. The problematic form, the pernicious form of DEI that we're talking about is one that is steeped in critical social justice, which is inherently divisive. It perpetuates a narrative of oppressor versus oppressed, perpetual oppressor and perpetual oppressed, in ways that are obviously detrimental from what I just said, but also aren't really preparing students for the world they're entering after graduation. What's more, I mean, we've had so many groups celebrating, the beauty of diversity and culture and things like that long before D, E, and I, those letters were put together, right? From Woodson creating, what would eventually be Black History Month to the Jubilee Singers, they got together and did this on their own, They didn't need a DEI office or something like that to do it, and we don't need one now, really. Diversity, equity, inclusion, great things. It's nice for every college campus to have those, but not the version that we're seeing today, not the version being pushed by accreditation services.
Yeah, accreditation is one of those kind of sleeper issues that not many people know much about. So if you're one of those who doesn't know much about accreditation right now, this is basically the process by which the U.S. government certifies the quality of colleges. So we've basically outsourced the government saying, okay, you're eligible for Pell Grant student loans to these accreditors. Well, who are these accreditors? They're kind of quasi-public, quasi-private entities that then evaluate the colleges. And this is already a very strange phenomenon, right? Because you're basically giving these accreditors authority over federal spending. The problem with fixing or reforming accreditation is that pretty much all the solutions are even worse than accreditation. So it's like that Winston Churchill quote, like the problem with democracy is that, or democracy is the worst government that's been tried except for all the others. Well, accreditation is probably the worst quality certification system we could come up with except for all the others. So the ones you hear the most about are just kind of centralizing it within the federal government. That will lead to all sorts of problems. It would immediately lead to even more politicization of higher education. It wouldn't weed out low-quality colleges because we already have a lot of low-quality colleges that the government is not weeding out. It would suppress innovation. So anything that would hurt the top-tier schools that have the most lobbying power would be suppressed. And so there's a lot of problems with moving in the federal direction. So one of the main ways that I think we can improve accreditation is by increasing competition among accreditors. So believe it or not, up until a few years ago, the U.S. government actually mandated regional monopolies for accreditors. So not only did we force colleges to deal with an accreditor, but we only gave them one choice of the accreditor that they could use. So fortunately, we got rid of that in 2019, but we still haven't seen a competitive kind of landscape emerge in accreditation. And one of the reasons for that is that the U.S. Department of Education is the only entity that can approve new accreditors. And so I think diversifying away from that, introducing some safety valves would be really valuable. Independent commissions would be a really good idea in my perspective. I understand that there's a lot of movement with the current administration to kind of bring independent administrative agencies under the executive authority. So you need other ones. Consortia of states would be another solution. But basically, we need a lot more accreditors out there, and we need to encourage them to be experimental and innovative. Right now, we use institutional accreditation. So look at Ball State University, and they give the entire university a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And there's like a few things that they can say, okay, you got to improve this. We should be doing this at the program level. You can't evaluate an entire institution. You could have a great chemistry department and a terrible economics department. The chemistry department should have access to Pell Grants. The economics department probably shouldn't. And so we need to make some changes. But I'd love to hear some thoughts about what Congress is considering.
Let me say something. The word is competition. Understand that is the American way. When you guys leave here today, you decide to go out for dinner or lunch, everyone's going to have a different decision based on what you prioritize. It could be pricing, it could be quality, it could just be the environment. Whatever it is you think is important, that's going to be your decision. That means every single place that sells food has to compete against the other to figure out how can we bring in more people to us than go to other guys. That's the way education should be the same way, about competition and accreditation. You're right. Monopolies don't work in this country. It's just too much power in the hands of a few. Let me just say one thing that I want you guys to truly understand about the concept of becoming a more perfect union, because I've lived it. We are the greatest country because we're so diverse, because we have so much culture, but we have a couple things in common. We love the idea of assimilation. We love the idea of being Americans. Now, let me tell you how this works out from my upbringing. I grew up in the 60s. First exposure to white Americans was until I was 16 years old. Back in those days, interracial dating was just forbidden. It wasn't going to happen. It was just impossible. It just what you can get you can actually get hurt trying to do that. Here we are now, what, 40, 50 years later. My family, I have 6 kids. In my 6 kids, we represent Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, and American Indian. We call each other family. My 17 grands call each other cousins. And who cares what the background is? We're one family. That's the America we're working toward, guys. And anything that takes that away, this DI mess of dividing us, of deciding to judge each other from outside in instead of inside out, that is so un-American. And we have to make sure that we go America first, assimilate, make what it's called, it's merit. Be the best. You be the best at anything you do, believe me, you will command respect. And people want you to be on their team, and that's what it comes down to. Okay?
And you know, I appreciate everything you just said. And it doesn't mean that individuals have to trade in their culture of origin, you know, to assimilate. No, it's your family, but there can also be an appreciation for those backgrounds, a celebration of those backgrounds as well. There's often a zero-sum mentality in a lot of academia and activism these days, saying if you are part of the American society, then you have to give up something. And that's not necessarily true. You can have both. I feel like I do it quite successfully on a regular basis. Others can too.
It's good. Let's I mean, not that we haven't been talking about provocative things. Let's continue in that path. So one criticism of reducing the size and scope of federal funding in education, kind of the state generosity in that space, is that you're going to hurt access to students who want to go to college, particularly students of lower income backgrounds, and probably disproportionately students of non-white backgrounds. What are your response to that?
Let's start off with the concept that every child has remarkable potential, no matter what the color is. We have to begin to recognize, give every child an opportunity to learn, give them high expectations, give them the ability to be disciplined, and they will break the mold of wherever they came from. My granddad was a 3rd grade dropout. But guess what? And my grandmom got her high school degree when she was 50 years old. But they raised kids. My dad got his PhD at Ohio State. My uncle got his PhD at Ohio State. Another one's an engineer who had his own little private plane in the 60s. You see how that can happen within one generation if the expectations are high and the opportunities there? So education should be given to every person, and we should not, the mindset that we skip people ahead because they are of a different color is as racist as you can get. Affirmative action DEI is racist as it gets. I dealt with that. I came through when my expectation, I went to the University of Miami on a football scholarship. The goal was not to go to NFL, which ended up happening. The goal was to become a marine biologist. In the 60s, that was unheard of for black people to think like that. Now, why did I think like that? Because my dad was a professor. I was around people like that. I saw the potential, and he always, they gave us this great opportunity. You can do anything you want to. So there's no limitation in my household, in my community. The limitation came when we get outside the community and people looked at me and said, you can't do this because you're not smart enough. So when it comes down to education, let's get away from the exterior criteria. Let's give every child a chance for an education, which is choice is a big piece of that. It's amazing to me, the folks who are against choice, guess what they do? The first thing they do when they get some money, they choose for their kids to get a better place. They get to a different zip code. They take a second job. They will move to wherever they got to go to, and then what do they do? Close the gate behind them. Well, Americans don't close the gate behind us. That's not who we are. All right, so I hope I answered the question, but I'll just say this. We have the potential to be the smartest, most prepared society in the history of mankind today because of you guys. If you guys believe in yourself, if you're willing to support each other, if you're willing to go through the ups and downs and get back up when you fall flat on your face, if you're willing to put yourself around the right kind of people and dream big. We were talking about, who was it? He's not here now. Is it Salas? The one that we met from Full Sail. We were talking about this earlier. And he was around here somewhere. He's the one that put the mic on me.
Oh, Cecil.
Cecil, okay. Cecil talked about how it took him 7 years to find the right spot. That what he was trained at Full Sail down in Florida, which is a remarkable school, to fit into what he's doing now. Well, guess what? What if he'd given up his dream 4 years in, 5 years in? The dream is so important, guys. Never give up on the dream. If you do that, some way you'll find that place where you say, this is exactly, it might not be exactly what you were thinking about, but when you get there, you say, this is exactly what I needed. This is exactly where I want to be. So dream big. That's what this country gives us an opportunity to do. Never, ever, ever give up on yourself. And never, ever give up on other people around you. All right, that's unfortunate. We have to get past that mindset for sure.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I want to, let me frame the question for you too, so you can really hit it out of the park. Let me give the question.
Okay.
Higher education, loans, how does that actually sometimes hurt people of lower income backgrounds, people of non-white backgrounds?
Okay, so I will answer that question, but I also want to make a quick point about access. So I feel like the access conversation stops too soon. Because they treat like walking through the college gates on your first day as the success. That's not the goal of going to college. The goal of going to college is to get an education, to set you up for a great life. Like walking through the gates that one day doesn't do anything. And so if all you leave from college with is unaffordable debt that you're never going to pay off, and no education, that is a failure, and yet that's counted as an access success. And so when we're talking about access, I think we should think about long-term success. Don't define it as just walking on the gates. Okay, now back to your question,
Yes.
which could you repeat it, please?
So student loans, the criticism is that if you reduce the size and scope of government generosity in higher education, it will hurt students of low-income backgrounds and non-white students disproportionately. How can actually this generosity sometimes actually hurt them? In ways
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it sort of goes back to the access thing. So student loans are so generous right now. So right now, the Congressional Budget Office, which is Congress's like accountant branch, basically, they estimate that over the next decade, we're going to lose about 20 cents on every dollar that the government lends out in student loans. And that's going to bounce around a bunch as, you know, the Trump administration introduces new policies and courts evaluate some of the Biden policies. But right now, for the next decade, we're projected to lose about 20 cents. So what does that do? Well, that provides an extremely massive subsidy for students and for colleges. So remember, colleges get to keep all that money. The students, in theory, have to repay a lot of it. Although we don't know how the student loan forgiveness stuff is going to play out yet. And so this can really set students up for kind of disaster financially, emotionally, and just the opportunity cost of their time. Like if you spend a lot of time in college, but you leave without a degree, without meaningful prospects in the labor market, and with a whole bunch of student loan debt, that is not a successful college experience. And so to the extent that these subsidies are kind of encouraging that, I think it's a mistake.
Sure. All right, so we've talked about potentially that students can get misled into certain majors and programs that don't set them up well successfully for careers and paying back these loans. Is the answer then to forgive the loans, Congressman?
No. I'll say this, just to kind of piggyback on what I was saying earlier. What is it that makes our society run? First of all, it takes people willing to take a risk, get out there and do something different. I started a business when I got in NFL, and I thought that what it would take is just a lot of hard work, which I'm one of those guys, I don't mind work. If you put me up on a work spectrum, I can make that happen. What I learned, though, in my little process is not only do you have to have a good work ethic, you have to have a good idea. And if you don't have a good idea, 9 years later, my business went under. So I know what it is to lose everything. But what I learned from that was so valuable. The fact I can tell you right now, work is important, but ideas is very important too. And so to the point of student loans, first of all, the way it's set up right now is where you have too many people, too many kids leaving school with a degree that means nothing, with a debt they can never pay off, and hating our country at the same time. That is not a good return on investment. And that's really the compensation I was getting, return on investment. The return on investment of my failure was later on when I realized, number one, I can come out of it. And the return truly is me sitting here telling you guys, if I can do it, you can do it. That to me is really the message that we should be giving all our kids, is a message of hope. When you go through college and come out hopeless, that is not a good return on investment. And we have to figure out a way to, first of all, make sure that of all the things we can do, is you give your word, you do everything you can to keep it. You don't say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to give it to somebody else to pay off for me. That's not the way to start our livelihood. That's not the way our country works, and that's the way we should never put that into our mindset to do that. So, we'll figure out a way that's fair, a way that takes away this predatory interest. I mean, the things that right now are stacked against the student is remarkable. I mean, it's amazing the things I see. Not only how easy it is to get debt, and by the way, whether it's your debt or your parents get the debt for you, they will die with that debt. They can't get rid of it, all right? And then you put predatory interest on top of that, and the only one who's winning is the school that has no skin in the game. Imagine this. They put all this out there, and then they say, okay, take care of it, deal with it, and they just add that until you have this big, you go to these colleges, see all this, I mean, you see the remarkable colleges, these buildings you just cannot believe, but students coming through and not succeeding. So return on investment is what we have to look at, competition and skin in the game. And what we're doing right now, we're putting in legislation. It's called the Education Choice of Children's. No, I'm sorry, that's another one. We're called the College Cost Reduction Act. Thank you so much. All right, and it says a couple things. One is skin in the game. If you're not teaching, if you are teaching a course for $100,000, that person gets out and can only make 20. Who's responsible for that difference in 80 is the college. They should not be putting through a curriculum that's not going to give them a return on their investment. And when these colleges start understanding that, guess what they do? They start firing these teachers that can't get them a good return. They're going to start putting together a curriculum that says, you know what, you do this, you will make this because we're going to back you up. It's amazing when we bring into this process the free market and accountability, and that's where we see this happening. So meanwhile, we're going to figure out a way to address the student loan issue where it's fair, that's predictable, and that those who have done it and that are paying it off, they can get their second chance to move forward.
All right, well, with that, let's start moving into the Q&A session. Let's start off with an online one, and then we'll kind of bounce between online and in-person and go back and forth. So this online one, I think Andrew would be a good person to answer, just to kind of give a basic kind of economics lesson around interest rates and student loans. So Anonymous says, I've always wondered why student loans have such a high interest rate. Just lower the interest rates on student loans would be a simple solution. Which have you considered lowering the interest rates on student loans? Easy enough, right? There you go, problem solved.
Well, unfortunately, I don't have the power to set it. So interest rates in kind of a private marketplace rise or fall based on the supply and demand of savings. And borrowing. And so in a regular marketplace, the government doesn't really have any role in setting interest rates. What's unique about student loans is that because the government's the lender, it does set the interest rate. And it used to set interest rates in a much worse way. So the way we did it in the early 2000s, like they would pick a specific number, and then, based on politics, move it up or down. I want to say it was like 2006, 2007, we tied interest rates on government loans to the T-bill rates, which is the government's cost of borrowing. So it's much more logical, makes a lot more sense. But as a result, right now, if you look at things like Parent Plus loans, it's like 9.1 interest. That's a really high interest rates for parents who are taking out Parent Plus loans. And so the urge then is, okay, well, let's lower the interest rate. The problem you run into there is that is a very badly targeted subsidy because you're only subsidizing, so something like the Pell Grant, that's a very well targeted subsidy. You're targeting it to the low income and you're giving that student all that money. Things like an interest rate subsidy, badly targeted because you're only subsidizing the students who are borrowing, which is less than half of students, and you're subsidizing people in direct proportion to how much they borrow. So a grad student who borrows $100,000 is getting so much more subsidy than a first generation student who's going to the community college. That doesn't make any sense. So regardless of how you view subsidies, and I'm pretty anti-subsidy in higher ed, you don't want to do it through the interest rate. You want to do it through things like Pell Grants.
Yeah, thank you for that. All right, let's go to in person. We have a lot of hands, so microphone, you have the power to pick whoever you want. And just make sure to introduce yourself, name, and affiliation, especially if you're from a college right now.
All right. Hi, my name is Sophia Warden. I'm from Ball State, and I'm an SDA alumni. And I wanted to ask you, in the same vein as affirmative action, what is your stance on universities favoring typically less qualified legacy students? And are you working on any legislation to ban this form of anti-meritocratic selection?
It's racist. I can say it in one word. No, we need to get away from judging people of outside in, period. And the worst thing that can happen to a young person who's not been taught in K through 12 how to read, write, and think is you lower the bar and you put them in an environment where they compete against those who've learned how to read, write, and think. Not only are they going to have more debt, they're going to come out feeling less about themselves and being upset because some kind of the way the man is against them now. So if you want to develop a divisive society, do that. What we need to do is this: teach all our kids how to read, write, and think. No matter what their background is, no matter what zip code they live in. We should never have a child given a death sentence of education because they happen to live in California or in some zip code where they don't have any money, so they don't get the opportunities. Choice will change all that. By the way, when you have choice, every school, including public schools, raise their system because they're competing against each other. So let's get away from affirmative action. Let's get away from anything that judges people from outside in, and let's go with merit. And you get merit, no matter where people are in their life, they say, I got to compete. Guess what? They'll work overtime to compete and win because they want to get there.
And legacy is not about merit.
Roger. Let's do one more from the crowd. We got a lot of hands, so.
Hi, I'm Cecil Bohannon, and I've been a professor at Ball State University for 45 years, so I've known a lot of things that are going on. One thing that's worrying me at this point in higher education, of course, is the enrollment cliff. And as we have fewer students coming in, and as there are increased calls for accountability, one of the measures of accountability is how many students graduate. What's the graduation rate? And I sort of regret to inform that I think a lot of places, universities are putting a lot of pressure on faculty members to inflate grades in order to get the students in, keep them in, and move them on. What can we do in federal legislation and policy to keep that from metastasizing into something that will ultimately destroy higher education?
Do you guys have any insight?
I like to think we wouldn't need that top-down savior to come in and change things. I like to think that the faculty and administration at any given college can get together and remember that they once had integrity and that they once graded people based on the work they did, period, and not based on some kind of goal that the school needs to reach. And I still believe in that idea. I still believe in self-regulation. I still believe in the faculty having a lot of say at any college campus. And the pressure to create a certain number of graduates has a detrimental effect like that, right? So we have to question that goal and how we're measuring that goal. And that will take a long conversation we cannot have at this panel.
I'll say this as a real quick. First of all, skin in the game would play a big part. And I remember having this conversation with my dad. Dad was a professor at Florida for 40 years, a very principled guy. And I remember having a conversation at the very end of his career, so frustrated because there was a young man that came into his class, did not show up, did not do the work. He was about to fail him, and the dean was pressuring him to pass him. Well, Dad, being the principled guy he said, I'm done with this. He saw this happening. So you have, at the end of the day, we have to bring back the idea of principle. I think the key is we have skin in the game, where it's not only the grade, but what do you do afterwards? I think that will actually, that will claw back the concepts of making sure you have the right teaching, the right scores, so when kids get out, they can go out and produce. Because if you don't produce, it comes back to the school to figure out how to get the best teachers in place to get them ready to go out and be prepared to do the work they need to do.
All right, let's do one more from online, and then we'll let the audience take it from here. So this one's from Shannon Kelly. I'm going to take her last part of her question. I think it's really good because since you're the chair of higher education and workforce development, this kind of fits well with you. So what are some other forms of education or curricula do you think will gain acceptance, like certifications, ongoing professional training, this kind of CTE, not the NFL CTE,
Yeah.
the workforce CTE?
Makes a difference there. It's very important. Okay. Innovation. We had Nick Saban come in to speak to us about 3 years ago. How many people do not know who Nick Saban is? Okay, all right. Nick Saban is one of the best coaches in the history of coaching for the University of Alabama, all right? And he was coming in to talk about something that I related to he was talking about sports, so I related to workforce. He says, we can identify a young man in 7th grade. By the time he gets to the 11th grade, we're offering him a scholarship. Now, how could they do that? Because this is handshake in between. This young man knows in 7th grade what Alabama could offer him. And he's so excited about getting there and being part of it, whatever it is that he's excited about, that he's doing whatever, he's self-disciplined to do whatever it takes to make sure he's qualifying for that. Alabama has recognized this as a great potential. So they're going to make sure they continue to feed him what it needs to know to qualify to be part of this program. So win-win. What if we looked at our workforce the same way, digitally? What if we were able to handshake someone in 6th, 7th grade, skill set, passion, the things that drives them, tie them into some type of career that they see early. This is what I would love to do. The parents buy into it. And it's digital, it's interoperable, it goes across platforms. We're able to capture the competency and the skill and put it on a record. And a record is somebody that everybody cares with them. Now, this is something that President Trump had already started back in his first term. He had Western governors, he had Walmart, IBM, he had all that put together, stakeholders put together, and of course, Biden ended it when he came in. I want you guys to think about how that would work, that we can have young people coming in, when they get out of high school, they've had a certification, they're ready to go to work. And they don't have to worry about taking another 4 years if they don't want to. Or later on, they say, well, maybe I do this for another 2 years. They can figure out, based on their record, based on what they want to see as competency and what the marketplace gives them, what kind of education they need and where they need to put their time to get the best return on investment. Okay.
And something comparable to that is the concept of outreach programs. I'm thinking of the Hidden Genius program, which is STEM oriented. But there's an outreach to students in high school, right? They go to the high school students go to campus, they get to see what it is to be a biology major, what it is to be an engineer or something like that. And that culture shock that often takes over many students when they get there doesn't take them over because they've already gotten acclimated to the college experience to some degree. I think we need more of that, right? I think we need more. I think the summer bridge programs we have for a lot of students, the summer before freshman year is too late. How about freshmen in high school? That's when you start outreaching and things like that and create that pipeline. And we'll see, I predict, a lot more success.
Well, sorry for the folks that still had questions in the audience. We're officially out of time. The congressman's got to get back to voting on the Hill and doing his work. But I appreciate everyone coming. Appreciate you, Congressman, coming, and of course our experts. And
Can I just say this one thing? One of the things that I've been saying since this is going my third term, and what I've recognized over the last two and getting to this term is that we have a stronger and stronger America First Congress. Those who care for the right reasons, those who are trying to find the right solutions because they're innovative. And my big ask is that the innovators, we're a very innovative legislative body, but the way to get there is to talk to innovators like this. Folks who spend their time thinking through these issues, thinking about the answers, solutions, and then coming to us, we can then create legislation to codify those new thoughts, innovative thoughts. So my quest is to create more innovators. We need to have more of you guys thinking outside the box, taking risks of having conversations. You might not know exactly how it's going to end yet, but the fact you're thinking and asking those questions, you can come up with ideas that we haven't even thought about yet. That's how our country grows. Innovation, taking risks, failing, getting back up again, dreaming big so you never, ever, ever quit on whatever that mission might be. You do that, I'm telling you, you're going to set yourself up for your kids to have a remarkable, remarkable life and career. So just know the effort you're putting in right now is not just for you. Like every other generation that came before us, it's the generation that follows. That is the American way. So we continue to do that. We'll correct ourselves, correct the shift that we're going through right now, bring the best education in the history of mankind here in the United States, and then we'll see the results of that as this time goes on.
Thank you so much, sir.
Great.
That was great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much.
Yeah, that was great.